welcome to another weekly update. I hope you're doing well. A couple of things this week. I'd say the slowdown to Christmas feels like it's kind of maybe started a little bit, so there's that to look out for. We are going to talk through a couple of things this week, but there's not loads and loads of news like there is sometimes. Sometimes it's hard to choose what things to put in and what stays out. But we're going to go through some of those things. But yeah, it does feel like things are kind of slowly gearing down towards the end of the year. All right, so first up though was a blog post from the Microsoft 365 developer blog, and this is all about the Microsoft Teams Toolkit that's in Visual Studio Code, and specifically some GitHub Copilot stuff that's come to it. Now this was quite confusing to read, and I had to read it a few times because all of those words make sense, but I already thought they all existed. I already thought Visual Studio Code already has, for instance, GitHub Copilot. It already has the Teams Toolkit. But what they're talking about is they're taking, not really GitHub Copilot, I guess. They're taking, whatever. Okay. They're putting some LLM stuff into the Teams Toolkit, but they're calling it Microsoft Copilot and they're calling it an extension to the toolkit. Now that blows my mind slightly because the Teams Toolkit is an extension to Visual Studio Code. So they're calling this an extension to the extension. Let's go to the blog post. So here we go. So we're talking about the Teams Toolkit and then how you can enable the GitHub Copilot extension for Teams Toolkit. This kind of confused me slightly, but okay, whatever. But the point of that is, the reason for doing all that is that when you're then in GitHub Copilot Chat, you can then type and mention the @Teams app and ask questions. Presumably then it goes to the Teams Toolkit repository for its answers. So yes, so what this is, the outcome that doing all that gives you is the ability to use GitHub Copilot Chat, and in doing so, mention the Teams app to ask questions, things like what types of apps can I build? It looks like, I think, maybe, it's just based on like a fixed knowledge base LLM rather than necessarily being like something that has actions associated with it or any kind of like that kind of like connecting in to your Teams Toolkit instance. I think that's true. Certainly doesn't look like there's a lot of, certainly the examples and things like that, they all look like they're based on like a fixed knowledge base. Which is why I kind of referred to it as an LLM. Okay, so yeah, slightly confusingly, you can look. This is in preview as well, so you do need to switch to the pre-release version. So you need to look out for that if you're not seeing what you're looking for. So go through this blog post. If you're not seeing what you're looking for, make sure you're on the pre-release version. Is this useful? I guess maybe. I'm a bit torn at the moment between these like mentioning of extensions in order to answer questions. I think the whole point of LLM and AI is that you shouldn't need to know the thing exists in order to need to know to invoke it. We're trying to get away from the apps problem. On mobile devices, apps are great, but you need to know the app exists. You need to have installed it. You need to know. Like we're trying to get away from that to where you just talk about your intent and then the back end figures it out. Stepping stones, I know. So it's good to see this here. Honestly, I'm not wildly excited about it, but maybe you are, and maybe this is useful for your flow. If you live in GitHub Copilot Chat and you want to be able to ask specific questions about Teams apps, you're going to love this. So I'm glad it exists, but yeah, just letting you know about it. Go check the blog post if you want more information on that. Also, there's a new Microsoft Learn page about this idea that you can take messaging extensions from Teams and turn them into, what used to be called Copilot agents, declarative agents, and are now just called agents, I think, agents for Microsoft 365 Copilot. And there's a new how-to page on doing that in the docs page, in the Microsoft Learn site. I say it's new. I didn't notice it before. I'm fairly sure it is actually legitimately new, but it might just be a rewrite. It's hard to tell because all the naming conventions are changing as well, or the names of things, now that everything's becoming an agent again, rather than say a declarative copilot. It's hard to know whether they deleted the old page and just added this one and it's essentially the same thing. We've talked about this a lot. I've done videos on how you take your messaging extensions and turn them into agents. So this is not new ground particularly, but it is good to see it all written up. And if you want a authoritative Microsoft-based source to point people at, then this is probably that page. Yep. So a bunch of prerequisites about what you need. A reminder that all this stuff is in public developer preview. And it's only search commands at the moment that you can use as sort of things that can be extended to be used by agents, not yet actions. So there's a nice diagram on what that means. The idea is you've got your messaging extension, which you've already written for Microsoft Teams, and you can quickly adjust the manifest slightly and make it something that Copilot can use as an agent as well. That's what this whole page is all about, but it's got some good how-tos in various different languages or IDEs, I suppose, for how you do that. Takes you through the whole process, and the end goal, if you like, which I do prefer. It's like it's easier than it used to be. Is that your agents show up on the right-hand side here, and this kind of replaces that plugin model that we previously talked about. So nice, it's good. I haven't really talked about the renaming of everything to agents, and I'm not going to spend ages and ages on it because we only have a few minutes in these updates. I will say there is a cost. There's an engineering cost, and I don't mean on Microsoft side. I mean like on the side of everybody using Copilot and developing against Copilot. There is an engineering cost to changing names. Like it confuses and it slows down progress, and it means everybody has to kind of like rethink, reassess what they're doing, work out whether the thing that's being announced is actually new or whether it's a renaming of the old thing. So I understand why it's important to do that renaming and to get the naming right, but there's been a lot of renaming recently, and there is a kind of mental overhead to doing it as well. So yeah, hopefully we're going to settle with agents. That certainly seems to be the industry standard, and everybody is very excited about agentic technology and agenticness. So I think it's good. At least hopefully this is the big rename, and now everything can kind of stay still, and we can have Copilot and we can have agents, and agents can be a kind of catch-all term for a variety of different technologies under the hood that expose additional functionality to Copilot. Let's hope so. So that's that. The last thing I do want to tell you about, which is kind of a little bit off topic, I suppose, but it's of interest, I think, if you're in this world. And it might be that you're kind of starting to wind down a little bit for Christmas and think about, other things you might sort of want to read or just catch up on and stuff like that. May have a little bit more time than normal as things like code freezes come in and all the rest of it. And so I'm going to point you to a blog from the Directions on Microsoft site, which is where Mary Jo Foley has landed. But this one is actually by Barry Briggs, who he's an analyst there, but he used to be a CTO of Microsoft IT, so his opinion counts. But he's written a blog post all about Microsoft's Silicon journey and why it matters. And I thought this was really interesting. It's good to kind of have a think, I suppose, about the life, all the stuff that's happened with Microsoft and hardware over the years. And so this is a nice blog post for doing it, kind of charting the history, but also the why, and the why does it matter, and where Microsoft currently are. And he had some interesting thoughts as well, and some interesting views, I think, on hardware, why it matters, and where Microsoft are placed today in terms of like the hardware that's really important to us now, that kind of like the GPUs and the AI hardware and stuff like that, and silicon and all that kind of stuff. It's a very relevant part of our industry right now. So I thought that was kind of interesting. All right, that's everything from me. I hope you have a great week, whatever it's you're doing. I'll speak to you again next time.